really excited to be here and to see my friends. And I heard the site was splendid last year. I was not here, so this is my first time coming. But indeed, it's really impressive. I got lots of pressure, and plus we have so much great talk before me, the Inception one. If you haven't seen the AI one with the Inception, please see the recording. It's great. And also I have a IoT, really I think an educational platform for physical hacking. That's also a great talk. So I got lots of pressure to follow after that. So I'm here to talk about TE in Web3. So two really mysterious words, I think, being used a lot. Now, before I start, I'm gonna put a disclaimer here. I used to work at Intel, so for people that know Intel, that you see this type of slides very often. And what I'm presenting here represent only my own opinion, not my current and former employer's opinion, okay? So one more thing I want to say about this. I want to show this picture first. How many people have seen this or known these? These are some attack just happened last month. These two things really caused trouble to my talk because I have a completely different set of slides talking about what are the software vulnerability we find in TE, in the Web3 applications, and this is actually a family of exploitation happened last month, which caused me have to redo my slides. Okay, so I see no people raise hand, about these two attacks. So I'm gonna go through those at a very high level first. Then we're gonna come back to talk about TE, Web3, and what we have done before. But good news is, at least I believe, my conclusion, what I plan to say in the previous version of the slides, that does not change, right? Even I have to deal with this two new type of, not two attack. This is actually a family of attack. So one is called SGS.fail, the other one is called TE.fail. And you can go to the site for more detail, but I can give you a quick overview. So what are these attacks about? So these are physical attack first. And what the attacker did is that they use a physical device to basically do a man in the middle, or sniffing your memory bus. So think about what you do with network sniffing. Now you're actually watching the memory bus, or all the CPU memory access, you're watching it, okay? Now in addition, this is not simply just passively watching it. The attack also need root privilege. It will require the attacker to pin certain memory to a physical memory location, okay? So it's a quite strong prerequisite for this attack. You need a physical memory access or physical device access, not a simple, power on or off. You need to put a device in there. You also need to have root privilege to launch this, okay? Now it sounds quite challenging, but this is still severe attack. It indeed caused trouble to system use Intel SGX, newer version, Intel TDX, which is really latest version of the TE used by, issued by Intel, and also AMD SEV. It also demonstrates that these actually have severe impact to some Web3 application or blockchain crypto application, which I will explain later. Okay, so this is a severe. However, one thing I want to point out is that this attack does not work against the early version of SGX or Intel SGX or the enclave solution, okay? And the reason is that in the initial design of the Intel SGX, the memory encryption is actually not deterministic. So which means that if you have the same plain text, if you want to put in the same physical memory place, in the early design, every time you do encryption, the ciphertext is different. But in the latest generation of the like Intel TDX, in the newer generation of SGX, because of the performance optimization, Intel chose to do a deterministic AES encryption. So if you have the same plain text, same physical memory, you end up having the same ciphertext, which for people doing secure analysis, this certainly shows some crack. Okay, so that's some of the background. Now, let's look at what the media response to this. You've probably seen some article like this to say, oh, Intel and AMD enclave got, have some risk, okay? But more interesting, for people that work in the Web3 or crypto field, you've probably seen this. I hide the person, but this is not against certain person, but someone actually, because of last month's activity, they made a claim, says TE has been fully compromised, okay? And of course, they will also promote their own solution, say their solution is, the best. This is the message I'm trying to debuttal, okay? I want to say is that even with the recent development, it's not the TE being fully compromised, okay? And I think it's easier, I hope, it's easier for the cybersecurity, traditional cybersecurity community to understand that's not the case, okay? So that's what my talk is about later, okay? Now, I certainly will want to mention what Intel and AMD's response. You can find this online, but overall, both Intel and AMD said that these are really require physical access. These are the assumption already outside the initial design. So that's the response. Now, so I first want to say a few things, based on the current situation. I want to emphasize is number one, this is not the first time we got some TE or SGX enclave or confidential computing system get compromised. There have been many, lots of them. Of course, this one is a little bit, different in the sense that they show how easy to do a physical attack, but that's not really unique. We have seen this a lot of time. And in fact, later you'll see some of our work, right? But more importantly, I want to say that what this impact about. It's really sophisticated, really highly privileged attack. And it's not something like compromise the whole TE, the secure model. It's really because of certain security trade-off or performance trade-off that made so that certain version of TE implementation is vulnerable to this type of attack. But there are still lots of probably much more common, easily to happen risk that TE are defending. That's still very valid, okay? This attack indeed affects some of the Web3 application, which I will show later, but what I want to say, my word is that so far TE is still the best defense for privileged attack. So if you want to prevent some of your cloud administrator with a root access to mess up your data, you probably still prefer a system that use TE versus one that don't. Okay, I kind of put my conclusion first, right? So let's start really look at what is the TE, what is Web3, what's really going on. For people that don't have the background, I want to quickly cover these information. And also, because of the two terminology really refer lots of things, I also want to use the next few slides to establish the common ground for our discussion. So what is TE? So actually TE is not a new term. I'm pretty sure for cybersecurity people, you have seen this a lot, the trust execution environment. All of you have your phone probably use TE. So if someone says TE is being compromised completely, well then you should worry, right? Like your fingerprint, your bio-identification, verification, your payment, it's all protected by TE. So TE is the first introduced, at least in my knowledge, by ARM for maybe close to, I would say, more than 10 years, close to like 20 years. And what had happened is that on your phone, for example, there are really the regular, your Android, iOS system running. We call it normal world. There's also an isolated execution environment called the trust zone that's running independently from your normal world, your OS or your root. So that's why you have a trust execution environment. That's where your credentials in your cell phone being stored, okay? And then in about close, I would say 10 years ago, Intel and then also AMD follows that they start to work on a security, hardware security mechanism that allow people to have a piece of, memory region and execute code in a relatively malicious environment. So you don't have to trust the system that you're running this code as long as it's really running the enclave. So initially you have the Intel SGX version that you have to modify your application and write your enclave code. And later, AMD SEV and Intel TDX allow you to simply reuse your code, put it into a VM, and then make that itself as a big enclave. So that's where we have the secure enclave from Intel, the SGX, the TDX, and the AMD SEV. So I'm doing a really quick overview, but all these information, there are plenty of detail online. And then with all this, you probably also heard the term confidential computing. What the enclave SGX or the Intel TDX and AMD SEV enables is a more secure or privacy protected cloud computation. You are using Azure or Google Cloud, Amazon. Each of them have their own version of confidential computing. What they use are hardware mechanisms, like I mentioned before, that have isolated execution environment and data only decrypted at those environments, and even the system administrator won't be able to access those. So that's the model called confidential computing that really the main place they use all these secure enclave and TDX and SEV. And what the threat they are protecting against are insider threat, or the privileged attack like system admin, or even think about the regular case that even the system admin is trustworthy, then their system might get compromised, they got phished, and the malicious attacker can still become an insider, right? So that's the background on confidential computing. Now, in the past, again, some credential on my side. So I have led a team working on TE and trust execution environment and confidential computing for quite a while before I joined the Web3 company. So we are the first team that breaks the AMD SEV, the SMP version, the secure nested page version. And we show there's a side channel we can, when you have a root, you can leak. And of course, AMD already fixed this. We also build a software tools that are able to help you identify software implementation vulnerability in SGX, in different type of enclave. We call it SGX Ray. This tool was released in Black Hat USA. And we found quite a bunch of vulnerability in the past. Now, the last thing I want to summarize regard to the TE before I talk about Web3 is that when we talk about TE, whether it's been compromised or not, whether compared to other security technique, very often TE was being challenged and been really inspected with a microscope, right? A lot, and you see lots of security. Lots of news to say who break SGX, who break SEV. But you don't see that many claim on other privacy, enhancing or protection technology like fully homomorphic encryption, ZKP or MPC, and so on. There's one big reason about these comparison, it's because one thing I want to emphasize, and also for you to later consider different type of technology, is their security model or their threat model. I haven't mentioned that in the early slides that TE are mostly targeting for privileged attack. It assumes your attacker might even have root access, right? But if you look at other privacy-enhanced technology, often you will see terms like their security assumption is called semi-trust or semi-honest security model, which means that in order for their privacy protection technology to work, their participants or their even adversary have to follow their protocol. Okay, so that's the biggest difference. That's also why even last week I don't want to name the particular technology. Their vulnerability disclose certain package was vulnerable, not TE, but the other technology. But no one jumped out to say, oh, we fully compromise certain, either ZKP or MPC or FHE. It's because they start with a much weaker, adversary model. That's also why I want to use this slide to explain why we have seen so many reports on TE security, vulnerability or a new method to attack it. But however, I think all the cloud vendors are still insist using it for the strongest protection. Okay, so that's the background on TE. Now let's look at more fun on the Web3 part. Okay, because I started working in the Web3 field 3 years ago and learned a lot. Okay, so now first I want to tell you that Web3, the word itself is simply a marketing term. Okay, it doesn't really have much of the technical meaning, but what does it mean? It really refers to a bunch of blockchain and crypto applications. And here's a picture shows really overview about what is a blockchain application. So in high level, a Web3 application is really involve users submit transactions to a group of usually distributed validator node, and they need to make agreement or consensus. Once they agree and put this on a public ledger, a blockchain, then your transaction got finished and then get public. So that's the high-level overview about Web3. Now, where does TE being used in Web3? There are actually many. Even the whole community have really, in my opinion, biased against TE, but it has been used a lot place. In general, I put it into 3 groups. The first group is easy to understand. It's the wallet, or the enterprise custodian side. Okay. In fact, lots of the crypto are actually stored or being processed using TE. The second group is what I call like the layer 2 roll-up or off-chain computation. So the most representative one, I will say, the Follow network or automata. So think about the recent AI and the Web3 trend. Now, if you want to get your Web3 application to do some AI computation, it's just too costly to do those on blockchain because all the effort do the computation require all the validator to participate. It just costly and it is computationally infeasible to run on chain. So that's why we got lots of blockchain application actually do the off-chain computation and then put the attestation report online. And same thing for the layer 2 roll-up, which is a way to try to get the execution of the blockchain faster and the low cost. They also do the computation in batch, and then you can use TE as one way to validate, and ZKP is another one commonly be used for the roll-up. Then the third group, for people that have a rough idea about the crypto blockchain application, all the public chain, all the transactions are in public. All the account balance is in clear, visible to anyone. Except like you may not know who that account address belong to, but all the activity transaction are on public, and people there are people don't like this situation. They want to make sure, they want to avoid disclose their activities. They don't want people to see, either their balance or, where they send their money, right? So that's why there's also private chain or there are, public chain use privacy protection technology such as TE. So the representative one is the secret network and the builder net. I will mention secret network later in the example. So in the rest of the talk, I will pick two example application to show how they work in general and how TE works, and then what potentially go wrong in terms of security vulnerability and how people can fix it. So let's pick the last one, the secret network. If you remember, what is the general blockchain, public blockchain, how it works, it's using a bunch of validator node, and they execute transaction, and these are in public, and they need to get to consensus. Then if they agree this is the result, then they put it on the chain, right? So what the secret network try to do is they want to run the validator node in a TE. They also don't want to have the blockchain state visible to anyone. They only let it visible to the code running inside TE. So theoretically, if no one knows the decryption key, unless you participate this network, you will not able to see the blockchain, the state information. You also don't know what transaction being executed. So that's where TE being used. So secret network is probably the most representative, or at least an early version of a public blockchain that have private protection ability. And it's built based on Cosmos, and all the validator node need to run on Intel SGX. So that's the background. One more piece of information. All the state, the blockchain state, because it need to be, you need to have the validator to agree on this. So validator all have to access the blockchain state. So it's encrypted, from outside, but once you get into the network, you are in a TE. That's been decrypted using a common consensus seed. So once you join the network, being accepted in this network and shown you have running a TE, then you can decrypt inside the TE. Now, how does the secret network take a new node? There are certain requirements for the staking, so it's certainly not arbitrary node can join it. You have to show you have to show that you have certain crypto assets, and the way secret network allow a node to join is they validate that the node indeed running a trust execution environment, and specifically they have to run Intel SGX one. So the way I draw this picture, this is a simplified picture, shows that for normal SGX node, in order to join the secret network, you have certainly have the software download and put into your SGX enclave. You have to have the attestation report sent to the secret network. Once the attestation report been accepted, then the secret network will send the consensus seed to your enclave, certainly encrypted by the public key showing on the attestation. Now, in the typical Intel SGX attestation, the enclave, secure enclave, really the attestation report is generated by a coding enclave, which also have a provisioning attestation key that provided by Intel service provider. So you can't easily fake this, and the trouble with the secret network is they blindly trust this. They're just assuming that if someone can provide valid attestation report, they will consider this is definitely someone running a piece of hardware and have Intel SGX capability in it. Unfortunately, the recent attack exactly target this. The SGX fail or TE.fail fail shows that people can actually fake a machine by first stealing it, stealing a SGX attestation key, and then you can use a normal machine, pretend to run the secret network validator node, but then you can also generate a attestation report and send to the secret network. As a result, the secret network will send the consensus key back to this pretended to be enclave, which if it's really enclave, the user or the admin won't be able to see the key and won't be able to control the behavior. Unfortunately, because of the recent attack, this become possible. So that's made the secret network vulnerable to this attack. Now, based on the report we see from both the secret network and also the author of the paper, that they report to secret network early this year, and they already addressed this in a different method, which I'm going to mention later. And no one actually really did this, because they still can check who is in their network, and they use additional validation method to show that indeed they are using a real hardware, not a fake hardware. So this is the additional method they add to do the mitigation. But the lesson here is that even TE or the secure enclave provide this attestation, provide this defense. You cannot simply use that to replace it as a physical operation or OPSEC part. That's where the mistake is. If you add additional layer of protection, like the camera or the monitoring in the data center, typically run by the like Amazon Cloud or Google Cloud or any decent cloud infrastructure, then this should not be a problem. But unfortunately, the early version of secret network blindly trust this without looking at any other factor. That's where their privacy could got broke in the early version. Let's move to another example. The second example, I think is much easier to understand. I picked the wallet example because I think lots of people use it. So this is one slide I copied from Samsung. So Samsung, this is the early version of their wallet, their blockchain wallet. And what happened is that they have their key private, the private key generation, handling, also signing all in the trust zone, the TE. They have a TA in it, and they have a bunch of DApp built over it. Let's quickly look at how this thing works. Now, when you use a wallet, you compose a transaction. For example, you want to move money, okay, from your account, let's say, to your friends. Now, this application running on the normal world, on the Android side, okay? So you can compose this transaction, but in order to really use your wallet to sign this, you actually trigger the trust applet or TA in the trust zone. And the trust zone actually going to have a trusted UI. This is the UI only controlled by the trust zone and cannot be controlled by the normal world. And you have to have the user type the keypad on the trusted UI, and then you can have the transaction later signed. Like you have to type a PIN. This is kind of like the PIN access your hardware wallet, and then you can sign it, and then the normal world later get this transaction posted with your signature, right? Now your key never leave trust zone, and the transaction gets signed only when the user have the right PIN. Now, for people that know, you probably heard the Bybit attack, right? That's a hack on the exchange, not on this type of wallet, on the custodian. But I think the attack there is they are attacking the UI part. And Samsung are using the trusted UI, so it's not easy to break the trust UI. Now let's move to the work we did. Right? So we actually look at the software vulnerability in this trust application. Remember, even trust don't give you all this isolation. There's still piece of software has to interact with the normal world. And in particular, they have multiple TA. We look at it. There are really multiple commands you can interact, and we actually identify multiple type of vulnerability. But because of time limit, I'm quickly summarize the type of problem. Then I'll give you one example. So overall, when you have this type of situation, when you have the input controlled by the normal world, and you have the TA act in the trust zone, and you don't have access to the memory directly, but you can still mess up all the input. Lots of time they don't have enough input validation, and they don't check the memory bound, and sometimes there's also unintended data leak. I'm going to show you one example. This is the one bug we use to actually compromise the Samsung blockchain wallet, which they already fixed. And the way we did it is that when we send in a piece of data, remember all the data come from normal world is under attacker's control, right? And then we can put any data there. This particular data we modify is really just the size, the really first piece. This size being used later by the trust zone application to allocate memory. Because we actually use a large piece of, we put a large number, larger than the IO buff memory they use as a unit. So as a result, when they do the first malloc succeed, and when they do the second malloc, it failed. Okay? And when they failed, they use the size, because we can control the offset, and just by accident, they have the pin number right next to our memory buffer. And they also have a debugging message they print out. This is not unnecessary, but they leave this channel there. As a result, when we do this, we cause their internal code executed, do multiple malloc, and eventually they will leak the pin number through their debug message. So that's one of the methods we use to compromise their blockchain wallet. There are many other ones. I'm going to mention one more without telling too much detail, but this is all in public, and their software also is in public. There's a key custodian company called Safe Haring. They have an open source SGX wallet for enterprise to manage their private key. So we find that they have a similar memory boundary problem, that they take data from the normal world or to outside the enclave, but they did not validate the pointer, which allow us to write. We can let the pointer point to anywhere, and also point to the place we control. Then they then allow us to manipulate their program. So as a result, we can cause a privileged attacker can actually cause memory overwrite and leak in their enclave module. So overall, there are many memory bugs we find, and I have two previous talk here I listed. If you're interested, these are the resource you can go to look at, or you can ask me more information. At the very end, I'm going to show a takeaway message. Again, I'm kind of repeating myself early, that first, TE is actually designed really with a very severe privilege attack threat model. So as a result, there are lots of attack or exploit people find, but all these efforts are actually going to enhance the system. The recent attack indeed affects some of the Web3 applications that solely rely on the attestation report without any additional layer of protection. They should modify, and you should have additional layer of protection, like, for example, proof of cloud. Okay, and then I also want to end this to show you that we are actually working on a project called Tclave. This is actually using Rust to implement lots of the TE SDK, which was mostly written in C, and there are lots of memory safety bugs can be avoided. So we have a couple recent talk about this, and for more information about using this to develop not only the regular TE application, but also Web3 application like DPIN or wallet, please take a look. We have a sample application, sample SDK there, and for more information, please go to tclave.apache.io. web3.org. And thanks for your attention.
A big round of applause. Thank you so, so much. And I especially appreciated the intro to TEs because now I'm walking away with a lot more insight. So let's take some questions. Please raise your hand and keep it up so I can see you. If you're not, oh, yeah, there in the back. Please keep your hand up until the mic reaches you. And if you could please stand up so we can see you because you're a bit far away.
Thank you. So my main question would be, was there any bottleneck for the TI adaptation in Web3?
Sorry, can you repeat?
Was there any bottleneck for the TI adaptation in Web3?
I still did not hear.
If there was a bottleneck. In applying TE for.
Right. I think really nice question. The question is, are there any bottleneck for TE in the Web3 application? Actually, performance-wise, if you're talking about, the TE are trying to replace things like ZKP or, HSM, which are much, much more slower. So TE actually has a performance advantage in the blockchain or Web3 application. So I would say there's performance bottleneck, no. I would say right now the bottleneck is more on the mindset. There are people like what I show on the slides, they're saying, oh, TE is not secure. We have other algorithms more secure. Well, they are not compared in the same threat model. Correct. Put in the same threat model, you will see how them compare. I would say some other will, fail easily, right? But again, we should really talk about under the same threat model, compare it, and TE has a great performance advantage. Thank you so much.
Thank you too.
Okay, we're ready for another question. I do have one question. If no one's taking that opportunity, I wanted to ask if you've seen vendors be more reactive or responsive to vulnerability disclosure in your niche rather than compared to, let's say, more mainstream vulnerability disclosure types of situations.
So are you talking about the vulnerability response in my field or like?
When you report vulnerabilities to
I
different technology vendors, because you said that the example you gave, you said that the company was really responsive. I was curious if that's a common occurrence.
Right, really nice question. So use my own experience. So I joined Web3 or crypto field maybe 3 years ago, right? Before that, I worked for large enterprise. I have interact with Azure, Google Cloud, and Intel, AMD. When we report for people working in cybersecurity field, I think the large enterprise has already been educated to know how to handle this, how to handle the security disclosure responsive. And I think, it's not ideal, but I think it's already much better than 10 or 20 years ago, I will say. But in the crypto field, I started to feel like I'm experiencing something like I experienced like 20 years ago when I talked to I don't want to name the company, I talked to them, I show them their potential vulnerability. The next one, the next message I got is like their lawyer are threat to sue, right? I think crypto field are learning. There are some of those entities are really professional. They know the threat, but some other younger, smaller project, they still need to learn how to handle security incident, report response. So I hope they get to the stage as more mature as the traditional cybersecurity field.
That's a very insightful answer. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you.